Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome back to Golf Talk Live. I'm, of course, your host, Ted Odorico, and I want to thank all of you for joining me this evening on our first broadcast of 2015, and certainly looking forward to getting back into the swing of things, as it were. Obviously, it took a well-deserved break, a well-needed break, to be quite honest, and enjoyed the holidays, as I'm sure many of you have as well. But welcome back, and glad this is the first show of 2015. And very excited. I got a couple of great guests. I have Alison Curdt coming up here shortly. Excuse me. She's a PGA Master Teaching Professional, also a member of the LPGA as well profession, and also the Director of Instruction at the Wood Ranch Golf Club out in California. A little bit later in the broadcast, I'll be joined by none other than Pete Buchanan, who is the founder and director of Plain Simple Golf. And he and I are going to talk about some ways that he's utilizing with his business on how to make it a little bit easier for you gentlemen and ladies out there that are still struggling around the golf course. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with Pete later in the broadcast. But before we get things started here, let me just, of course, remind everybody a little bit about the broadcast. You can obviously get us most frequently at blogtalkradio.com. You can do it a number of ways. You can either type in blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, or you can just go to blogtalkradio.com and go up into the search key and just type in Golf Talk Live. That'll also get you there as well. And make sure also while you're on that main page tuning into the program, if you'll notice just under the header there is a follow button. If you click on that, that will actually, I send out notifications for each of the shows ahead of time, but also just prior to when the show airs, and it just sends a little reminder into your inbox and lets you know when the broadcast is about to go live, and how you can get in touch with it and so forth. So great way to keep in touch. So make sure you go and do that and follow along that way. Or you can email me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com if you're interested in other ways of following the program. I'm going to tell you a few new ways that you can do that as well. If you want to call in and speak to either myself or any of the guests during the live broadcast, which is airs Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central to 8 p.m. Central every Thursday, unless otherwise stated. You can call into the program and speak to, again, either myself or guests, or if you have any comments or questions about the program, you can certainly do so, again, by calling area code 646-716-4667, or you can just email me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And also those of you in the golf profession, if you want to come on the program as a guest sometime, you can certainly email me there as well. And I'll be more than happy to reach out and fit you into the schedule here. If you want to follow on social media, you can do so. I'm on Facebook, of course, not only personally, but you can also follow along with the program. I do regular postings every week for upcoming shows on Facebook at facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog. Make sure you have blog on the end there. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. That's CEO in capital letters. But my Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO. And, of course, you can check out the Golf Talk Live website at www.golftalkliveblog.com. As I mentioned just a moment ago, there's also some other ways that you can follow along the program. You can only get us here directly at blogtalkradio.com, but you can also, if you're not able to tune into the live broadcast, you can either go to blogtalkradio.com and go through the on-demand section. You can just scroll down once you go to the main page there, and scroll down, and all of the previously recorded programs are in order, from the most recent being at the top to the oldest, of course, down along the bottom. But you can scroll through the previously aired shows, and of course they're all auto-recorded, but we are live Thursday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. But a couple of the other ways that you can do it is through iTunes. If you're somebody that frequents iTunes, you can go into the podcast section of iTunes, and both Golf Talk Live and my other show that I co-host with Cindy Miller, LPGA professional Cindy Miller and Legends Tour player, Women of Golf, is also in iTunes, and you just go into the podcast section, and you can actually subscribe to both of the shows there and listen to the downloads as it's convenient for you. Also, you can go to Stitcher.com. Golf Talk Live. Women of Golf is not on there yet. I'm going to be putting that up shortly, but Stitcher.com, if you go there as well, if you're somebody that frequents that site, you can also tap into the program through Stitcher.com as well. But as I said, joining me tonight, I've got some great guests. Just a few more quick announcements here before I bring on Alison. So Alison, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, just bear with me here for just a second. One other thing I want to mention, of course, I talked about last year, Coach's Corner, and bringing that back. Had a lot of great success with Coach's Corner, and just for those new to the program that aren't familiar with it, essentially what Coach's Corner is, beginning in March 5th is when I'm going to start it up this year. The program, of course, Golf Talk Live is a 2-hour program, but starting in March, the first hour, much like I did last year, is going to be dedicated to a panel discussion. So I'll have a number of different coaches on each and every week from beginning March 5th, and we'll have some panel discussions, some specific topics will be put through, and also some email questions will come through from the audience that we'll put up for discussion as well. And I'm going to rotate that panel out every week as I did last week, and just to get some fresh voices and fresh perspectives. But the idea is obviously to help you guys out there with your golf game. So it's a lot of fun. Everybody that participated last year had a great time, and many of them have come back this year providing their schedules permitted, and some unfortunately weren't able to come back just due to schedule conflicts, but we're going to try and see if we can work them in any ways. And I've got some newcomers as well that want to join in on the fun. So I got a few surprises. I'm not going to tell you what they are quite yet, but here's something that you want to do. First off, to the coaches out there and instructors and teachers, if you're listening, try to encourage some of your students to either call or email us in as well if you want to help them along and get some fresh ideas and perspectives from some of the other coaches. It'd be a great way to add to your students' mix, if you will. And we'll give all the details as we get closer. But that is beginning on March 5th, and that'll be for the first hour of Golf Talk Live. As I said, we'll have normally have about 2 to 3 different coaches on top of myself. And we have that panel discussion. And then, of course, the second hour of the program will be my guest interviews, as I normally do. But in the meantime, I've got a great guest coming up here, waiting in the wings, Alison Curdt. She is a PGA, LPGA Master Teacher Professional and the Director of Instruction at Wood Ranch Golf Club in California, as I said. And let me just tell you a little bit about Alison before I bring her out. Alison, of course, is one of 10 women really to achieve that highest PGA credential earned by an instructor, and has for over 25 years of golf competition background, and played on a full scholarship at Florida State University while earning degrees in both psychology and professional golf management. After turning professional in 2004, she moved to Palm Springs to bring her teaching and professional playing career while working at top resorts and clubs in the desert. Great place to work. Kudos, Alison. In 2007, she arrived at Sherwood Country Club as the teacher professional and first assistant, and spent many years overseeing all the programs related to both men, women, and juniors, in addition to running and coordinating and teaching camps and clinics. So a great resume here. She was also, in 2012, she was voted by her LPGA peers as the Western Section Teacher of the Year. And she has since opened up her own instructional business in 2014, and currently teaches at Wood Ranch Golf Club in the Los Angeles area. Lots of other great things. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but please help me welcome Alison Curdt. Alison, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Hi, Ted. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. First off, Happy New Year, and I hope you had a great holiday.
Oh, it was fantastic. Happy New Year to you as well. I'm very excited for what 2015 holds.
Yeah, I am as well, and I want to thank you for coming on. One thing I neglected to mention, Alison, is you've actually been on the air with me before, and along with side Cindy Miller, back in, I guess it was either late November, early December. You were on our other program, Women of Golf, which comes on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and had a great time, but it was a little bit shorter segment, so I decided I wanted to have you come on this program at night to my evening audience and spend a little bit more time with me, and we'll talk a little about golf, of course.
Great. Yeah, no, that was a fun interview to do. Cindy is fantastic. I think that what you all are doing for the Women in Golf program is really neat. So all women golfers should definitely listen to that segment. So I'm glad to have a little bit more of a platform to dig deeper into some of the topics that we broached.
Exactly. And just a quick note before we get going here, Alison, just to mention, since we brought up the Women of Golf, our plan was to actually relaunch it again this week along with Golf Talk Live, but we decided to delay it a few extra weeks. So we'll actually be starting our first broadcast, Cindy and I, with the Women of Golf on February 3rd. We were going to do it January 9th, but unfortunately we had some scheduling conflicts and decided to delay it with some of our guests for a few more weeks. So for those of you that were looking for it this week, I apologize, but we've delayed it a few more weeks. But certainly a lot of fun, and we've got some great things planned for that as well this year, and very, very excited and very happy to be tackling the women's market. Certainly a fast-growing market, and we feel we need to be a part of it with our program. So, but thank you for being a guest there, and welcome, as I said, to Golf Talk Live. Alison, I think what I would like, for us to start this off, just there may be a few people listening tonight that may have tuned into the other program, but why don't you just give them a little bit of background. We'll get into some specifics here in a moment, but just a little bit of background about Alison, where you sort of began and how you've moved up in the ranks where you are today.
Certainly. I started playing golf when I was real young, about 7 years, and my dad got me into the game, and I really just stuck to it. It was interesting how he got me into the game. It started from being able to not have any teams to compete on at that time. My brother was on athletic teams, and I was kind of jealous that my dad had this opportunity to be with my brother in the field of sport. And since I was 7 and I wasn't quite at that age yet where I could join any teams, my dad decided to sneak me out onto the golf course and put the club in my hand, and I really just grew to love it. I loved the competition. I loved the challenge of it, and it just really clicked in my body. I was pretty good at a young age. And so as I went through my own junior golf development, playing in city tournaments and then spreading out to some national tournaments, I knew that in college I wanted to compete, and one of my goals was to have a full ride scholarship to sort of repay back my parents for all the money that they invested into my lessons and my tournaments, to give them that feeling of, hey, I paid for college with this. So once I was involved in college, post-college life is really difficult. It's either do you just keep the skill and start your career in something else? Do you try to play professionally, or do you find a field within golf to where you can make a career? And I was really torn between a couple of passions with psychology and just the study of how humans interact, and the big question, why do we do the things that we do? And I really wanted to tie that in with golf. So post-college, I decided to continue into the PGA realm, add on the LPGA realm, and then really just study the physical mechanics of the swing. A couple of years into my post-college development, I felt that just studying the physical elements of the swing wasn't enough. We're dealing with people. People aren't robots. They're so complex. And so a couple of years ago, I decided to bridge that mental component as well. And so now as I look at my career, I have combined that psychology element with that physical element. And I teach, I play, and really just try to help as many people as possible, whether it's through that athletic lens or whether it's my nighttime gig, which is therapy. So I also do psychotherapy with in the community as well. So a lot of different things that I've got going on that tie in all my different passions.
Yeah, and let me just note, I didn't mention it right off the bat, but because I wanted to sort of save that as we moved along, but just for those tuning into the program, in addition to obviously your golf credentials, as you just mentioned, you obviously have a master's degree in clinical psychology. With you certainly specialized, if you will, or had an emphasis in marriage and family therapy at Pepperdine University. You're also a marriage and family therapist, registered intern with the state of California, and you currently work with not only adolescents but couples and families as well. And so this is something that you've sort of added to your arsenal, if you will. And let me just start off before we get into some of the other questions here. As you mentioned, the mental side of the game, I mean, obviously we all understand the physical side and we all try to master that, but there's really a big, side of the game that I think the industry is really starting to tap into now, and that's the mental side. And it's not just a matter of navigating the ball around, you're certainly not going to wheel the ball around, but there's a lot of other things. It's not just the stress and the impact of what's happening on the golf course, but a lot of times people will bring outside elements from off the golf course into their game on a subconscious level. So this is, I'm assuming, where you're really trying to target as well, is to help people to sort of sift through the rubble, if you will, mentally, to be able to play their best golf.
Yes, you're correct. We are not very good at always compartmentalizing and separating elements of our life. So it's really inevitable that when someone goes to the lesson tee or just enjoys a round of golf with their friends, that they bring that life baggage that we all carry with us. And to be able to have the skills to put that in a place that is productive versus harmful is really, one of the goals, I think. So to have the knowledge and the know-how to be able to help people navigate through some of that extra life factors that do affect their golf game just makes me, as an instructor, more valuable, I think, to them.
So let's talk about that a little bit, Alison. Let's talk about your role as both psychologist but also golf instructor and a golf performer. Let's talk about how that sort of melds into your profession. How do you utilize that new skill that you have in your everyday golf instruction?
I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to implement some of those techniques when I have students that are with me for an extended period of time. So the relationship becomes more of a coaching relationship, and that's definitely the platform where I'm able to utilize a lot of the skills. If I just see an individual for a one-time swing lesson, oftentimes there's not enough opportunity to start to lay the groundwork for some of the mental game. But many times those one-time students will end up coming back to continue into like a coaching program. But for the individuals that are with me and developing their game holistically, a lot of that psychology piece comes in once the relationship has been established. So they trust me as a physical instructor, and then we can really start to delve into what sort of emotional components do you experience when you're competing, when you're playing for fun, when you're playing with a spouse, when you're with your child, and what do those dynamics look like? And from there, I can help them sort of flush through all of that to find more productive and positive ways that it can help their golf game versus having, some negative thinking or some negative relationships, which ultimately hinder their game. There's also a technique that I use with some of my more elite players, so players in college that are transitioning to professional life or some scratch golfers that are looking to compete at the top level. And it's a modality that is used in therapy where when one gets into a heightened state of emotional arousal, you can recall times in your life that have been successful or you have felt a certain feeling, and you can tap into that resource to create that state again. And the modality is just tapping in. And it's based on trauma, but you can actually use it in the athletic realm. So with a lot of my college players, I will teach them this technique to tapping in, where if they're faced with either anxiety or anger or a negative emotion on the golf course, they can tap into their resources that they've already anchored, and they can bring their emotional level to a more productive state in competition. And it's a process that takes less than 15 seconds overall, and these players are able to control their emotions much more productively on the golf course when they're faced with some different things.
Now, you mentioned, obviously in a situation where you're just doing, maybe a general lesson, it might be a one-time deal, and obviously the hope is that they're going to come back. But you obviously don't want to get too involved in that area when it's just a single lesson. But if you've got somebody that wants to come back on a regular basis, what's sort of the process that you do to sort of assess that player, not from the physical part of their game, but the mental side? How do you know when you need to work on more of the mental side? What are some of the cues that you look for, and what sort of the process that you do to sort of, because obviously you don't want to come out and just, have them unload their baggage. You want to be able to sort of feel them out. So what are some of the steps that you take as an instructor? What do you do to observe that individual to sort of see where they need to really have some mental help more so than the physical side? What's your process?
I think the first thing that I do is what you mentioned is observation. So a golfer, whether I'm only going to meet them one time and I've got 60 minutes or they're involved in a coaching program, everybody reveals themselves within that
Sure.
first session, whether it's through their words that they use, the way that they stand, the way that they treat their equipment, the way that they treat their practice station during the lesson. So there's a lot of cues that I look for that I pick up on, particularly a lot of affect, so what's happening in their body language and their facial expressions, and
Right.
the words that they use are imperative to giving me clues into what might be going on in their mind as they are taking the lesson or as they're performing. And so using that information, I can start to ask them a question about, explain to me a little bit more about what you mean when you say that, or can
Sure.
you maybe clarify what you might be feeling right now? Emotionally, if this happens on the golf course, can you, draw a picture for me visually about what that might look like for you? And
Right.
posing those open-ended questions to them gives them the platform to describe whatever they feel most comfortable with. They could give me a lot of information, and that starts to build the relationship. Or if they appear more closed off with maybe just a few select words to describe it, then I can read that into saying, okay, we need to build the relationship a little bit more before
Right.
getting into those components. I think when people think of the mental game, they often default to merely just visualization techniques and pre-shot and post-shot routine. But where I go the next step further is, what sort of things are you feeling? Okay, you've just hit the golf ball really, really great. What does that feel like? And when they start to hear me ask those questions over and over, they then become more comfortable sharing that information with me.
Right.
And then I can sort of, backdoor it from there, where ultimately we end up working on the mental game. And they didn't even know that they were working on the mental game, but we built that relationship of trust and confidence.
Yeah, and that's so important because obviously you don't want your student to feel like they're coming for a therapy session. They're there to obviously learn about the game, but there's many aspects of the game. What are some of the ways that you decipher? Now, obviously you have different situations. You might have a player that comes in, obviously, that might be just a little nervous. It's the first time that they've really taken a professional lesson, and they're a little bit nervous, uncomfortable. They've never really sort of performed in front of a stranger like that before. How do you know that it's not just nerves that you're dealing with, as opposed to somebody that maybe has a deeper rooted issue that you need to work through?
I think for me is I don't like to assume. I don't like to take that stance of assuming. So I'll be directive, and I'll just ask them. You appear a little bit nervous. Is this your first lesson? Tell me a little bit about what your expectations are and what you might be going through. And then from there you can empathize with them. Yeah, it is pretty nerve-wracking to take some swings in front of someone. Hey, you've just met me. Let's all of a sudden have this business relationship, but then also you have to put your trust in me to help you. So I think when I'm looking at let's say, a first-time student, and I'm kind of reading their body language, what they might be feeling, I'll just call it out. And if they bite, hey, we'll grab onto that. If they choose that that's not something they're comfortable dealing with, then we'll focus strictly on the physical element. And once I start to know someone's personality, I mean, golf instruction then becomes a very intimate relationship in the sense that you're really seeing people at their best and their worst. And when you reveal yourself to an instructor in that way, your best and your worst, you become vulnerable. And no one likes to be in a vulnerable state, but if you've got a great coach, you can really strengthen that relationship. So once I get to know somebody through that state, if I'm starting to see patterns that I'm learning a little bit about their family, or I'm learning a little bit about their work, or, eventually they start to talk about a little of their personal life, then from there I'm able to say, you know what, this might be an issue that we could work on away from the golf course. If you're interested in doing that, because it's ultimately going to help your golf game, let me know.
Right.
We've got the freedom to do that. And I do draw a pretty clear boundary between what is conducted on the golf course and what's conducted in the therapy room. And there's oftentimes I will have students that we will have office sessions where we work strictly on some therapeutic stuff. And then when we get to the golf course, we start to blend that into their physical side.
Yeah, and that's really important, because it can't always be necessarily on the range or on the golf course. Sometimes there has to be that sort of sit down, and really, especially in the beginning. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially in the golf industry, want to get you right out there hitting balls and that, which is important. You need to assess that side of the game as well. But I think it really, as we've talked about before on this program, it's really about building relationships and building that trust. And once you have established a certain element of trust, that individual is more likely, going to be more open about their feelings, their needs, and what they're looking for. And you're going to be able to, as a coach or teacher, going to be able to help that student much more effectively. And speaking of which, how do you differentiate the shifting between teaching and coaching? Where do you sort of draw the line, and where you decide, okay, it's now time to teach, or maybe I need to coach? What do you do to sort of put yourself in that position?
The line between teaching and coaching often melds together. I would love for it to be compartmentalized between, okay, here's my teaching hat and my coaching hat. And I find myself blending the two together more often than not. I think a lot of times how I differentiate it, and there might be other instructors who have different opinions, is that when I'm teaching, there's a stance between I have the holder of the knowledge, and the student is sort of the receiver of the knowledge. And so I'm just delivering these messages of, here's some items to do in order to correct a particular motion. So it's a very almost one-sided position. But coaching now becomes, for me, a more holistic approach. So it's less about the education piece, and it's more about the implementation piece. And how can you use this in competition? Let's go try it. Let's go try it on the golf course. Let's look at different scenarios. So it's now taking the skill that has been learned, and it's coaching how to use that skill in various settings. So for me, I would love for teaching and coaching to be interchangeable, but I do sort of feel that there's this divide between when something is taught and then when we start to coach. Although for me, I tend to blend them together a lot.
Yeah, I think also, too, teaching, I kind of equate it to, really watching the teaching aspect like as though you're watching a video. You're watching the teacher sort of do their thing, and you're sort of, acting like a sponge trying to absorb that information. Where coaching, a lot of times, the instructor certainly is giving them information, but it's more of, in my opinion, more of an interactive process at that point, as opposed to them just sort of sitting and watching what you're doing and listening to what you have to say. They're more interactive in a coaching session, I believe anyways, and I could be wrong, but I think that's just from my own experience, what I've seen. I think that, again, you can't always compartmentalize one or the other. I think each individual instructor certainly has to find a balance either way. But, we hear a lot in the industry, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, some refer to themselves as teachers, some refer to themselves as coaches, gurus. I mean, there's so many different, titles that we hear in the industry, but I think really you have to sort of grapple to what works for you, and because we're all different, not just as students, but also as teachers, instructors, or coaches. We're all different in our styles and our approach in the way that we communicate with one another. So we have to sort of find what works best for us. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you put it together very well. I like how you differentiated teaching and coaching. I'm like taking some notes here. I want to write that down.
Well, it's kind of
you're right.
Well, thank you. It's
but
kind of
right.
like
we wear multiple.
Right. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
We wear multiple hats sometimes in the course of 60 minutes. We might have 5 minutes of teaching, and then all of a sudden we wear a hat for 30 minutes of coaching, and then we might kind of get into a friend, therapist, ally sort of role.
Yep.
There's so many different roles that we play. But when we look at students, you hit the nail on the head that each student is unique and is going to require something different from us as, golf instructors. And there are some students who don't even want the coaching side. They'll just say, tell me what to do and I will do it. I don't care about why. I don't care about anything else besides tell me how and what. And that's okay. That works for them. And then there's other students that might want to have more of a why, how do I use, how can I implement, can you demonstrate, and they might require, some different approaches. So, yeah, it's so unique, and that's, I think, one of the art. There is an art to teaching and coaching because we're working with a brand new slate every single time we see somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the things, obviously, here in the upcoming weeks, I guess a little over a week now, is going to be the PGA show down in Orlando. And I'm not going to make it this year. Unfortunately, I was there last year and certainly enjoyed it. But one of the point I wanted to make with that is, I saw a lot of things last year at the show there to help and improve your swing. And I'm not just talking about the different gadgets, but just different theories and that. And there's so much information out there that it's certainly very confusing for a lot of golfers. And I'm a firm believer. I like technology, and I've made no bones about this on the program. I certainly am interested in some of the new methods and things out there, but I think sometimes there's too much information given to the student. I think it's great for the teachers to understand these different methodologies, but I think sometimes it's almost like paralysis with by analysis with the students a lot of times. And I see it, and sometimes when I watch videos and things that some of the other instructors are doing, and there's just so much information that the students are being bombarded with, that it's just filling their head with so much information. It's almost impossible for anybody, short of a physicist, to be able to decipher that. So I think sometimes, would you agree that it's best to keep it maybe a little more simple and introduce things on a gradual basis as opposed to just bombarding with stats and facts and figures and different techniques? I think, again, it's an individual thing, I understand, but I think sometimes maybe as coaches and teachers that maybe we go a little bit too far at times. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. I think our role as the golf instructor is we need to be knowledgeable in that.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we need to prove how smart or how much we know to our student. It's not about that. It's about us being the library and being able to decide what information is pertinent to this particular student and what's the best way for me to deliver that message in a way that they're going to really understand it. A lot of my students continually come back to me and say, I love how you make everything so simple. And I think that's one of the best compliments that I can have, because the information out there, sometimes I get confused. When we start talking about flight scope and TrackMan numbers and some of these Facebook forums where everyone's throwing out numbers, I'll be honest, a lot of times that can get pretty high-tech and confusing. How can a student hit a golf ball if they're inundated with numbers? But to take that information and to deliver it in the most simple and concise way that a student can really hold on to that and remember 20 years down the road, I remember when my golf instructor told me about this. That is, I think, the part that we want to achieve. We can be the most intelligent and smartest golf instructors that we can possibly be, but it's the way that we deliver our messages to our students that's the art and the part that I think is imperative. Keeping it simple. I couldn't agree anymore.
Yeah, and I think just to sort of wrap that thought up, you raised a very interesting, or made really a very interesting comment about kind of referring it to as a library. And the way I look at it is this: when I go to a library, I go and look for certain things, and if I'm interested, I'll pull it out and I'll read it and that. And I think the student has to be like that as well. I think that you might have 100 different steps in the process. You might have a number of different swing theories and thoughts and that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every student has to get bombarded with all of it. They may be only interested in certain things. They may not want to know the whys, as you said. They may want to just say, hey, I want to be able to do this, this, and this. How's the best way, or how can I go about doing it? And we don't necessarily have to bombard them with so much information and detail that they really don't need, because now they've got to decipher and cipher all of that out in order to get the stuff that they really want. So it's kind of like going into a library. You want 3 books, but the coach is giving you, all 100,000 copies that are on the shelves, and you've got to read through every one until you find what you want. So I think sometimes, like you said, keeping it simple, I think, is the best method.
Exactly. And also asking your student, what do you want? Do you want to know about these numbers? Okay, that's fine. I can tell you about them, but here's the pros and cons. Or do you want to just know about what's specific to your swing? So I'm totally, and to kind of keep in with that library reference, I'm an open book in that sense, where I'll go ahead and share whatever information they're looking, but I'll be very clear about how they can use it and how it can be advantageous. And also there might be some consequences if they decide to latch on to certain pieces of information, because ultimately, back to the paralysis by analysis, too much information doesn't allow the muscles to move the most fluid way.
Right, exactly. On your side, Alison, you obviously are an instructor, player, and therapist. How do you find balance with all 3?
That's a really great question. It has been a struggle, I think, for me to, number one, hammer down what do I want to do in my career, and then how to balance it. And I think for me, I'm not sort of an all or nothing type of person anymore. I was, I think, back when I was a junior and maybe a collegiate player, where something had to be all or nothing. It was either tour life or nothing. But having more of looking at the gray instead of the black or white, or being able to look at things on a spectrum, really has allowed me so much pleasure in delving into many different passions. So when I schedule out my day, I, really draw clear boundaries between this is golf time, this is therapy time, this is athlete mental time, here's my time. And I make sure that all my needs are met as far as what I want to do in my career and in my personal life. And then I just sort of budget out my time, budget out what my week's going to look like, where do I want to put an emphasis in. I think what I tend to fall into the fault of is I'm sort of an education junkie. I just love learning and I love education. And sometimes I can get too wrapped up into what's the next thing I can learn. And so I need to budget that out as far as, okay, here's education time. Now let's implement it for a little bit before we jump onto something new.
Right, and that's great. One of the things you mentioned earlier in the program, you mentioned about when you came out of college, about what was next, what were you going to do next, and there's a lot of people that get into the golf industry. Some may right from the get-go know that they just want to be in more on the teaching side, but there's a lot of people, I think, that especially as juniors, they get visions of grandeur, thinking, wow, I want to play on the PGA or the LPGA tour, and they might have a pretty good game, and they get encouraged to go through the process. But then later on, when they realize it takes a lot of discipline, and not everybody's going to make the cut, no pun intended, and a lot of them don't realize just how big of a commitment it is as a player. And that's not certainly to say that as an instructor or coach or what have you, that it's not a difficult process as well for those that want to take that profession. But as a player, it's a whole different mindset. In other words, not all players are going to make great instructors, and not all instructors are going to necessarily make great players. So you have to find out what works for you and what you're really passionate about. And you can certainly do both or all of the above. But again, it's something that you really have to think through, and don't just go necessarily on your gut instincts, because I think there's a lot of people that go out there thinking they're going to be the next Annika or the next Tiger or Rory or what have you. and a reality check sort of hits them like a stiff wind in the face, realizing that necessarily isn't going to happen. So, and you obviously have played, and so you can kind of understand that, and that it is a difficult challenge. That it's not easy playing out there, grinding it out every week.
Yeah, I definitely was that person that you were talking about after college. I thought I was going to be that next tour great. I thought that ever since I was 7 years old. And not to say that I didn't have the ability to do that, but it was evident that that wasn't the route that I was going to take in order to accomplish that goal. And so what I found worked for me is, hey, I can still be a great player and do what I love, which is teaching, and deal with people on a psychological level. And then all of my dreams that I had wished for started to come true, playing in 2 LPGA majors and qualifying for my third. I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So to be able to balance out everything instead of saying this is the only route, I'm only going to be a tour player, and if I'm not a tour player, then that's it. I think a lot of kids these days, as they're getting out of college, do have that expectation that they think they're going to make it, and it's such a small percentage that actually do make it. And many people that do find out that it's really not the lifestyle that they're looking to live. Golf on a tour level is a very, very selfish lifestyle. It has to be that way. The player has to be sort of the center of their world. They have to commit their time. There's not a lot of free time to do fun things. You really have to devote a ton of time to it. And so it is a selfish sport when it comes to that level. And many people don't enjoy being on the road that much. But then there's other people who love it and are great at it, and I think that's fantastic. I'm so blessed to have the best of both worlds. I get to do what I love, implement change in other people and help them through whatever life throws at them, and then I get to go try and play my best golf and still compete at the level that I dreamed of, that I wanted to be at when I was 7.
And what's interesting about that is, I've watched a number of players. I've probably won the Masters 50 times in my head, since I was the age of 7. So, I always was a pretty decent player, but I just didn't have that discipline that was needed in order to go out on and believe me, I've had more dreams and fantasies of playing on the PGA Tour. But I just knew that it wasn't what I was going to be able to do. And you're right, it is certainly a great thing, but I think once people really understand it, what's interesting about that, Alison, is if you listen to a lot of the former PGA and even LPGA Tour players that have now sort of settled into the Champions and conversely the Legends Tour for the ladies, a lot of them actually, certainly not to take away from their careers, but are actually in a point in their life where they're actually enjoying the tournament play more. It's a more relaxed environment, and it's certainly still competitive, but it's a different process. And I think, again, that comes with maturity. I think as we get older and we mature and we realize, unlike what we do sometimes when we're in our 20s or late teens, when we're first sort of getting out in the world, it's a big world out there, and a lot of things can happen and a lot of things can change. And I think a lot of times as we become more seasoned in life, we certainly realize that it's not all roses and lilacs, so to speak, out there. And there's a lot of hard work involved to maintain that. And it's not as glamorous as a lot of people think. They look at the dollars and they look at the lifestyle they think some of these tour players have, but they don't look at the other side of the coin. Yeah, it's certainly for many and for some it can be a great financial reward. But there's also a lot of demand on their times, not just for tournament play, but for sponsor commitments, for clinics and things that they have to do outside of that just to keep up appearances. And it takes a lot of their time. They don't get to go and smell the roses, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really tough and sometimes can get very frustrating to live out of a suitcase on the road at 2-star hotels because you're on a budget in a different rental car week after week. Sometimes that lifestyle, it just gets really old. You just want to have a night in your own bed with a home-cooked meal, watch your own TV, and, be around your own things. And so when you're playing on tour, a lot of times that isn't an option because you're going week
Yep.
to week to week. And so it's a very, very tough lifestyle. But I will agree with what you mentioned about a lot of the Legends Tour players or Senior PGA Champions Tour players is I'm playing my better golf now than I was back in 18, 19, 20 years of age. My golf is way better. Some of my colleagues and I joke, if we could go back to college today, we would be NCAA champions at this level because your relationship with the game changes and it evolves and it matures, and it's not life or death if you miss a 4-footer. It's, okay, I'll get it on the next round. So it's really interesting to see how that as we mature and age, that our golf can actually improve. And we think that as we mature and age, that our skill level is going to decrease. And I find that that's been the opposite, particularly in the game of golf.
Yeah, and that's true. You know, Cindy and I have talked about this on the other show, and many of the guests that we've had on the Women of Golf, Carol Mann and Kathy Whitworth and some of the other, Rosie Jones, that have been on the program. All great ladies, have had phenomenal LPGA careers, but now they've settled into the Legends Tour. And if you ask most of them, certainly, again, you know, they wouldn't take away from their LPGA experience, but I think there's a certain pressure that is no longer there to the same degree. And I think it alleviates a lot of, obviously, anxiety, because when you're first starting out in that life, there's a lot of pressure to make it on a cut and things like that. So they obviously have that luxury now of obviously having a well-established career and being able to I don't want to say rest on their laurels, because that's not the right way to put it, but not have to be quite as under the same pressure. But I think also, too, they understand what's important. And for the men particularly, you know, when the young guns come out there, they're all about, you know, gripping it, ripping it. They want to hit it a mile down the fairway. But if you look at the stats, it's not necessarily all the guys that are hitting it, you know, 280 or to 300 yards that are winning the tournaments. A lot of times it's the guys that are thinking smartly around the golf course. That's why Tiger did as well as he did, and that's why Rory in the last couple of years is doing. It's not because they're hitting it further than anybody, or that they're hitting it necessarily. I mean, straight is straight. You can only hit a golf ball straight one way. You can't hit it any straighter than straight. So, you know, you can add all the components you want, but the bottom line is it's how you put all those components together to get the ball in the hole in the least amount of strokes as your opponents, and that's really what it boils down to. So I think as players start to develop and become more seasoned in their game, they start to realize what the real important side of golf is, and it's not necessarily all the physical. Physical has to be there, of course, but it's really the mental side. It's the mental toughness and how they stand up against their competitors. Yes,
100%. I mean, when we look at the mental game, where are people investing their money? New clubs, new equipment, and golf lessons. How many times do you have players admit that they're investing money in their mental game? Now, we might see some tour players start to be a little bit more open about it, and I think it's becoming a little bit more acceptable to talk about that sort of stuff. But look at where society is putting their money when they're playing golf. It's all into the physical side. And tour veterans are starting to, spread the word a little bit about that. Hey, it's more than just hitting it far. It's more than just getting in the best shape possible. It's an art form, and there's so many more components besides the physical element that are important to making any golfer, not even just a tour golfer, but just an amateur, the best that they can be.
Yeah, and it is important, I think, that, and that's, again, another component, another area that as instructors and coaches, we have to recognize that not everybody has the ability to go out there and play on one of the tours, and we can certainly work with different level players, and there's some that maybe have that skill level, but it's not just the physical side of it, it's the mental side of it as well. I know we're getting close here to wrapping up with our time here, but I've got just a couple more things I want you to talk a little bit about. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the program, you are a master professional, and tell us a little bit about the difference between that and what is referred to as a Class A in golf.
3 levels of professionals in the PGA. There's 2 levels of professionals in the LPGA. So starting with the PGA first, when an individual finishes their either college or specialty school degree, they go through a course of book work and skill work to become a Class A. So they're a member of the PGA and they're able to use a particular logo to state
Yep.
that they're a Class A member. And if you decide to further your education in a particular field, say instruction or management or golf operations, there's 6 different pathways. You can do some further individual study and some testing to become a certified professional. So I sort of equivocate that to being a master's level. If we look at schools for college, master's, and doctorate, that would be like a master's level education that someone might decide to choose. And then the final level, which we call like the doctorate level, is what's called a master professional. And there will be 4 stars above the PGA logo. And that's when an individual goes above the education process and really gets expert knowledge in some particular areas about either golf instruction or retail management or golf operations. I so chose instruction, and it's a process where it becomes a big project, so very similar to a dissertation. And then once you have completed that coursework and that project, then you present it to established PGA Master Professionals, almost like presenting a dissertation. So that process was really, really grueling. I think my final project ended up being around like 175 pages of anything possible that I could spit out about golf and my experience and so forth. And there's some guidelines to incorporate. And then to present and defend your stance regarding golf instruction is just one part of it. Then you have to teach a live lesson and implement ball flight within a 30-minute period with a complete stranger. So there's a lot to accomplish to get that final credential. And so that's the highest of the highest when we're looking at the PGA hierarchy, is that Class A, that certified professional with the 2 stars above the logo, and then the master professional that has the 4 stars in the logo. And then when we look at the LPGA, you have your Class A's, which, getting that, all the education completed and testing and so forth. And then after 10 years, an individual can choose to do a research project and defend it to get that title of LPGA Master Professional. So I have to wait till 2016, and then that will be my next education feat. Is to be the first golf professional, I believe, in the history to ever be a dual master professional in both the PGA and the LPGA.
Wow, good for you. And I certainly know, I know that your students and family and that will certainly be very honored to have you accomplish that. And what a great asset to offer your students. And it's a testament to really what you want to do is you want to, as you mentioned earlier in the show, is you want to be able to gain the best knowledge that you can. And learn as much as you can so that you can help your students. And that doesn't mean, again, that you're going to, as we discussed earlier, bombard them with all the information. But the more ammunition that you can get yourself in tune with is going to help you become a better, well-rounded instructor in the long run, and coach.
Exactly. Yeah. If I'm that library, we go along with that theme. I want to keep adding as many books as possible. So whenever I get a student, I can hopefully answer any sort of question that they bring up.
Well, and I think it's good for you too as well, Alison. I think it's good not just how it benefits your students, but it's also good for you. It gives you a sense of as the student wants to improve in their own area of life, and in their own area of their golf game, you want to be able to improve in your area as well. So it presents challenges for you as well as it gives them the benefits in the long run. Lastly, I just want to give you a few moments here, and I apologize, we're getting a little bit close here before I have to move on to my next guest. But you talk about here one of the things that you sort of do to help amateurs, and that's use mindfulness in golf and how amateurs can improve their own games with a specific technique. Tell us a little bit about this technique and how you're utilizing it in your practice sessions.
Well, mindfulness has gotten a lot of attention in the past 10 years as it's been used in the medical field for pain management. And so we see a lot of articles out there, how to be mindful in day-to-day living, how to eat mindfully for weight management. And that also can be used in sport. And basically mindfulness, the best definition, is doing one thing at one time and knowing that you're doing it. So it really just means being engaged in one activity and fully engaging your mind and body in that activity. So it's not talking on your cell phone while you're washing laundry and holding a kid and, multitasking, but it's really about doing one thing and being fully engaged with your body and mind in that activity. So as we look at that at the game of golf, what I try to implement into my players is when you're playing, to let go of judgment of shots, to let go of tying in an emotional reaction, and to really just be present. So what is your job right now? My job right now is to hit this ball in the fairway. Keep it as simple as that. Really be engaged in that process with your mind and your body, and to play a mindful round of golf. When the shot is over, what's your next job? My next job is to walk to the next shot. So being present in every single second of the game. And I tell you, it's challenging to do. It's challenging for me to do. It's definitely a skill to be learned and to be taught. But my players that are able to just combine 10% of mindfulness into their golf game not only enjoy it more, but ultimately start shaving shots off their game.
Yeah, and I think too, Cindy has talked about this on the mental side as well in some of her discussions on our other program. The other thing too that a lot of people have a bad habit of doing, even professionals, Annika Sorenstam has been noted publicly as saying this, that sometimes even in between shots, she has to sort of turn her mind off towards what she's doing until she gets sort of the next position, because otherwise you get, again, that information overload. If you get thinking golf and thinking in the moment all the time, 24/7, if you will, even in playing in a major tournament, sometimes that brain will just get too active, if you will, and a lot of times something can creep in and affect your play. And she talks about, Annika has talked about in as I said, in a public forum before, where she's actually had to sort of focus on what she needs to do for the moment, but then once that task has been done, sort of let her mind go elsewhere. And that doesn't mean she forgets about the tournament or what she's doing, but it just sort of stop and smell the roses, I guess is the best way to put it, so that she doesn't get so compartmentalized in a situation where she's so intensely focused on what she's doing that it tenses her up and actually makes it worse for her in the long run. Do you find that as well with some of the students, that you try to get them to sort of learn to relax a little bit in between their shots?
Yeah, I would say it's, for me, the language I use is just redirecting your attention to something else. So let's say they hit a tee shot. Well, in the process of moving from point A to point B, what's the grass feel like? Is the sun shining? Can you feel it on your cheeks? Is the wind blowing? What's it smell like outside? What are some of the sceneries? And so you're actually just redirecting your attention to something else that doesn't stimulate you as much as worrying about what my next shot's going to be, or what are the crowds doing, or what kind of score you're shooting. And so it's redirecting your attention constantly. And then all of a sudden you get to your next shot, great, you can go back into being mindful about what you need to do on this particular shot. And then it's just in and out. So teaching that to my players, they're able to really enjoy it and take the burden of having to carry all of this emotional energy for 4.5 hours. Like, that's tiring. This technique allows you to really just enjoy what you're doing and have more fun doing it, and ultimately you play better golf.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what Cindy has talked about in some of her approaches to the game as well. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think as the industry starts to recognize the importance of the mental side of golf, that it's not just hitting the ball down the fairway. There's a whole another side to it. And actually, Jack Nicklaus talked about it for many, many years, that really his strongest asset was not his ball striking, it was his mental approach to the game and his mental understanding of what he needed to do at any given point in a round. And once you sort of become a master of that, which is what we're all really striving for, I think you'll find that your golf game is greatly going to improve. You're going to play in a much more relaxed environment and not be as tense, and be able to handle that stress when it does creep up from time to time.
Exactly. Yep. That's what we need to teach all of our players to do.
Exactly. Well, Alison, on that note, I must bid you a farewell, and I want to thank you very much for joining me on Golf Talk Live. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I enjoy the discussion that you're bringing not only to the game, but to my audience particularly. And I know that we in our communications back and forth, I believe you had expressed an interest about joining in on some of the Coaches Corner panels that I'm going to be having coming up in March. So I'm going to send you out probably tomorrow, but I'll send you out the schedule. And if you're able to jump on board with that and participate in some of those sessions, that'll be beginning March 5th. Where we have a panel discussion with some others in the industry. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I hope that you'll participate in that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for, again, having me on the show. It's always so easy and pleasurable to talk to you, and so looking forward to the next time.
Well, you have, as I say all the time, you have an open invitation. You're welcome to come back anytime. If you have something that you would like to share with the audience, or if you just want to stop by and say hello, you're welcome to do so anytime, Alison. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for joining us on Golf Talk Live.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. You have a great evening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was Alison Curdt, and of course, she is a PGA Master Teacher Professional. As you just heard her talk a few moments ago, she's going to be going for her LPGA Master Teacher Profession certification as well. So that'll be coming up here in the next little bit, and we'll certainly keep you posted on that. If you want to get in touch with Alison, you can do so through her website at www.alisonkurtgolf.com, and that Curdt is CURDT golf.com, or you can email her at alison@pga.com. And lots of great instruction there. She's a fantastic young lady. She's been on, as I said, the other show, Women of Golf, and certainly enjoyed her. And look forward to her hopefully joining in on the Coaches Corner panel discussions as well. My next guest, who I see is waiting here in the wings. Let me just do an introduction here, and I will bring my next guest out. Pete Buchanan reached out to me as well. He's the founder and director of Plain Simple Golf, and he wanted to come on the show and share some of his thoughts and what he's doing to help those of you out there that are struggling still with their game. He feels that he's got a great approach to the game, and I like the word simple in the title, so I know it's going to be great. And let me just tell you a little bit about Pete before I bring him on. He is the founder and owner, as I mentioned, of Plain Simple Golf LLC, which also houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace, which we'll talk to him about as well. He's been teaching over the past 30 years and has simplified his golf swing philosophy in an effort to make it simple for players to play the game, which is what we all want to do. After a career, of course, with the John Jacobs Golf Schools, he has spent his last 10 years putting together a new revolutionary golf swing program that all golfers will find immediate results and a very simple approach to improving their golf games. The swing program challenges the current status quo of teaching golf. We'll talk to him a little bit about that as well, giving you the tools and knowledge to identify your faults and correct them yourself, which I'm all for if there's a way that we can help our students learn from their own knowledge as well as be able to tap into our knowledge. For those golfers wanting to simplify their game, the Plain Simple Golf Circuit will give them an opportunity to take advantage of Pete's new revolutionary swing program that will give them a great control over their golf and greatly improve their scores. Combine this with a simple swing repeater to speed up your learning process for your repeated practice and golf swing performance. His long tenure at teaching golf with thousands of lessons given brings to Plain Simple Golf one of the top teaching professionals in the Midwest. And with that in mind, let me welcome Pete Buchanan. Pete, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
It's great to be here, Ted. I appreciate you having me on.
Not a problem. I appreciate you reaching out, and welcome to the program. And I hope I got everything right there. I'm imagine you were listening in there as I was just doing the introduction. I hope I got everything. Still first show back after the new year, so my tongue's a little tied, so I might have stumbled over a couple of words, but I think I got everything straight.
Yes, you did. That sounded really good.
Thank you. Pete, let's start off first before we get right into sort of brass tacks here. I want to give you an opportunity, since you've never been on the program before, and give you a chance just to let the listeners know a little bit about you and your background. Tell us how you got started in golf in general, and then obviously moving into the teaching end of it. What sort of set a flame under you, if you will, that got you into the golf business?
Well, when I started off as a kid, my father retired from the service when I was 10, and we moved to Manhattan, Kansas, and he became a member of the country club. And just down the street from us were a family of brothers that all played golf. And I was out at the pool one day, and they needed some help doing something, so they grabbed me, and I think I was 10 or 11 at the time, and said, "Have you ever played golf before?" I said, "I played a little bit." And they sort of took me under their wing and got me started hitting some shots and helping around, picking up range balls and things like that. And that's really how I got started. And I was fortunate because one of the brothers that helped me a lot at the time was already teaching for the John Jacobs golf schools. So I got a real dose of simple instruction right off the bat and was able to progress really fast. And so I think in the next couple of years, I was down in the low 80s, high 70s by the time I was 12 or 13. So, the game came quite easily. I played a lot of baseball at that time too, and so I was able to adapt it pretty well. And so, it was fun. I enjoyed playing, and I had the opportunity to play, and I got some great quality help. So that really got me started, and it got me sort of interested in not only playing the game, but also teaching the game and trying to learn more about it. So I got started. I played in our junior golf program, which we had, probably 70 to 80 kids in it, and we had great competitions. And so I kept playing and, played all through high school and decided that I can tell you when I was on the range when I was about 16 hitting balls and just at that time I said, I think I want to pursue this professionally and try to play. And so, as we all do, you try to get as much help and learn as you can, and then, you try to play as long as you can, and in reality, it hits you upside the head, and then you said, I think I'll teach for a living. It worked out better that way. I tried to play, tried to become the best player I could, tried everything that, we all do to try to make it a good player that you can be, and throughout college, I played at Kansas State, and then was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to go work for the golf schools right out of college, the John Jacobs golf schools, and that's what really got me going. And I got to meet John himself, and I got to work with him, and there just isn't a more simple, humble, perfect gentleman for the game of golf than John Jacobs, and to be able to not only watch him teach, but have him help us learn how to teach, was probably the catalyst that brought me to where I am today, and the simplification that I've brought the golf game even more so from where he was. He challenged me at one time he said, I simplified everything that I learned, and, the challenge is, can you take it from here and simplify it even more? And so I took that challenge to heart, and that's pretty much what I've done.
Yeah, and Alison and I, my first guest, we talked a little bit about that, and I think, and you obviously by virtue of how you've sort of adapted to the game and what you're doing here with your business and your approach, one of the things that if I was to have a criticism in the industry, I think that sometimes we've created an environment, if you will, where there's so much information coming in to the instructors that is then being passed on or attempted to be passed on to the students, that it's actually overwhelming a lot of times to students. It's too confusing. There's too much information. And as I mentioned earlier to Alison, it creates a paralysis by analysis. And obviously you've taken your experience and tried to simplify the process. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, so I don't want you to sort of get too much information out there. But would you agree with that? Do you think that that's one area that the industry, I think, has gone a little bit overboard with too much information out there to the students?
There's no question. And it's not to knock the science, because I'm a big fan of the science of golf. Yep. But you have to be careful when looking at the science. A lot of tour players, they take the average of their movements, and that's what they're trying to teach people today. They came to those movements by the virtue of experience and learning and what they did. They didn't set out to move like that. They ended up like that. And so you can't take an amateur and all of a sudden say, hey, you need to move like this because the best players move that way. It's never going to work. It doesn't work that way. It's very confusing and very difficult for them to try to move. That has to be an evolved process. And I think today we have to be careful that we don't slide away too much from the cause and effect, ball flight, learning atmosphere that simplifies the contact back to the student to make the game easier for them to understand and therefore easier to implement.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've seen as well, and Pete, I'm sure you've seen it as well. If you've been, I don't know if you go every year to the PGA show or not. I was there last year. I'm not going to go this year. I've got too much going on, so I'm not going to be able to take the time. But one of the things that I noticed, and Alison, as I said, we talked about this a little bit earlier, is there's a lot of great, and it's neat to see a lot of this different technology. And it's not even just the technology, but even there's a lot of different swing theories out there. There's a lot of different methodologies out there, and they're all great and unique in their own way. But again, it sends, I think, sometimes a confusing message to the average student because there's too many options. And I don't think that necessarily that we have to water it all down. There can only be one, true or tried method. But I think sometimes that we have to be careful in our approach. And I like the fact that you take an approach where you're trying to keep it simple. You're trying to create an environment, if you will, with your students that say, hey, look, here's an easier way to accomplish what it is. Because ultimately what people want to do is they want to play better golf. They don't care they don't care what the numbers say as far as how many revolutions the golf ball. I mean, there are some out there, but the majority they don't care, or all of the stats that go along with it. They just want to be able to put the ball in the hole less times than the guy that they're playing with next Sunday. So they're looking for a way of improving, and they want consistency in their game. And I was watching your video that you have on your website, and I strongly suggest anybody tuning into the program that don't do it now because we're talking to Pete live, but maybe after the show you can go and do it and see his video there where he talks about some of the differences there, and you can go to do that at plainsimplegolf.com. And as I said, don't do that now because we're talking live, but do that certainly after the show and visit and look through his site. But you talk about that very thing, that you're trying to really simplify the process because one day they might go out and shoot an 82, which is fantastic, and the next day they might shoot 100 and something, and they can't understand why there's such a difference in what they did yesterday. And so, giving that analysis, why did you develop Plain Simple Golf?
Reason that you just went by. I just felt in watching all of the amateurs that I did and all of the people that I was able to meet through the John Jacobs schools, and I have to say one thing on that. If you're a young teacher, you need to find a golf school environment to go teach in because it is one of the greatest venues you could ever immerse yourself in for seeing multiple people, multiple swings, and learning how to fix things really fast. It's a great way to do it, and I was fortunate to do that. But I watched the struggles, and, it is just that the masses, as the information was coming along, they're like sponges. And, a lot of times I'm out on some of these different posts and blogs, and I'm listening and reading what these guys are saying about the golf swing. And a lot of times they'll say, well, this is only for the teachers. We don't, it's not for the students. I got to tell you, the students are reading that.
Of course they are.
They're reading what's out there, and they're trying it. And the message has gotten so convoluted. When you finish, when you're playing the hole, you're on number one, when you finish the hole, what do they ask you? What'd you have? They didn't ask you to describe how you did it.
No.
What'd you have? They want to know what your score was. So we need to keep it that simple. Ball flight, the ball and the club, if they could have a conversation, I think it would really baffle a lot of the golfing masters as to what they would talk about that's actually necessary. And I think it would blow them away to what they would find out, what's necessary to hit the ball correct. And there's a lot of that stuff that happens automatically. If you do the big things correct, all those little pieces will take care of themselves. So you have to look at impact and say, okay, what can we do in the simplest form to make the ball fly straight, hit it solid, and let's go have some fun.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I just want to touch on a point that you just mentioned, Pete, talking about these different blogs and things like that. The other thing, too, that I think a lot of instructors and us in the profession that need to keep mindful of is, even though it might be set up for instructors to exchange information, we have to be careful about some of the things we're putting in there. And I'll give you a good example. I remember one day, and it was probably a few months ago now, I'm sure it's been in there many times, but I've seen something fairly recent where somebody got in and talked about flight scope 1 minute, and somebody else was talking about TrackMan, and there were comparisons, and half the group liked this, and half of them didn't believe in that, and it was just, there was almost like a bickering going back. And I'm thinking, if I was an amateur looking at this, because they're all over Facebook, And
Right.
I'm seeing this squabbling going within professionals within the industry of what's right, what's wrong, and no, you're crazy, and this sort of thing. I'd be sitting there scratching my head. If these guys can't get it straight in their minds, what's the right way or what's the wrong way, how the heck am I supposed to understand it? And I think this is one of the things, the dangers that we have to be careful of in this industry.
Well, there are different varying things that you can look at to say how many golfers are leaving the game each year. Some of the numbers are upwards of 400,000 players a year are leaving the game. What are we doing?
Yeah.
We got to make it more simple to keep them. Let's make it easier to play. I have a group of guys that I was fortunate enough to get involved with, and these 4 guys are all using, and we'll get into it later, but they're all using my training brace. Mm-hmm. They've cut 45 minutes off their round of golf because they're no longer looking for balls.
Yeah. And that's true.
That's
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's 45 minutes. And that, not to interrupt, but that's a very important point that you make, because I'll give you a thing. One of the major issues of why there is a decline in golf right now is the fact that people have less time. And if you can shave 45 minutes off a round of golf because you're playing better golf, that's huge. That's 45 minutes of your life that you can do something else with. And so, that's what some of the things that people are talking about, even outside of the golf is, years ago it was always a joke, doctors and so forth played on Wednesdays, and most golfers went out on Fridays, Saturdays, and even Sundays. And now that's not happening with a lot of players out there. They just don't have the time, either family commitments or work commitments or looking for work, whatever the case may be. So their time is very valuable. Their time is very valuable. So we need to find ways within the industry. And there are certainly some very aggressive things out there, but we need to find ways in the industry that we can help these people get out there and play their best golf, and not just fill their heads with a bunch of malarkey all the time. And I'm not trying to knock anybody's process. I think they're all good in their own way. But again, as I mentioned with Alison, we each are not only different as a player, but we're also different as coaches and teachers. We all have our own different theories and our own different styles, and that's okay. But I think sometimes we can't get so deep-rooted in one way or the other that we forget the simple fact that the student just wants to play better golf.
Oh, there's no question. And that's the bottom line. One of the things that's really kept me grounded over the years is John Jacobs told me, never lose sight of what the ball tells you.
Yeah.
If you can always follow that rule, you will always keep your instructions simple. Always remember it's the club and ball's relationship that you're working with. And so, I don't use a lot of the new science to ground up. I don't use that. To me, that's too much to think about. I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at the impact, and I'm going to say, what's the major cause? Why is this player hitting the shots they're hitting? And I'm going to change it right away. And if you change the cause, the ball flight changes immediately. It's not in a month or 2 months or 3 months. It changes right away. If you take the cause as to why they're hitting the shots they're hitting out, their ball flight changes.
Yep.
So I was fortunate enough to learn what those were.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times you were talking about some of these posts. I can tell you one in particular, and I'm not just because you brought it up, so I'm going to step in there. There was somebody posted a video, and I looked at it, and I knew what the cause was right away. I knew what the main fault was for almost an hour, and nobody even mentioned it. It was all about ground force movement, leg drive, hip turn, turn your feet out, rotate your hips. The hips aren't right, the legs aren't right, the shoulders have to do this. And I'm like, is anybody going to take a look at the backswing and notice where the club is as to why he's hitting low hooks and fades all the time?
Yeah.
Do you know why that's there? And not a mention. And so, I'm looking at this, and so they're dancing all around the cause and effect. And that's what we have to be careful that we don't lose. Because in the end, it's that cause and effect that allows our students to understand what they're doing, so when you're not standing behind them, they can fix it themselves. And that's a giant key.
Yeah, and I think one of the fears in the industry, and this is maybe part of the reason why they do dance around it, and it's not just a matter of they don't necessarily know, because I know there's a lot of great instructors out there that are very talented and very knowledgeable, but I think there's also maybe a slight fear that they don't want to give the student too much information, because if he's out there fixing his own problems, he doesn't need me, and that could be further from the truth. There's always going to be a need for what we do, but at the same time, there is certain knowledge that will help a student understand what he or she is doing wrong, or as they say, cause and effect. It's, the old saying, every action has a reaction, and or for every action there is a reaction. So I mean, you have to understand that, and I think that's something that we have to get across to the students. Once they see what's happening at the end result, then they can kind of work backwards and say, okay, and once they understand what causes that effect, then they can work and get yield better results. But if they don't understand why this is happening, you can sit and talk to them all day long about getting into this swing and doing this over here, but it's not going to mount up to a hill of beans because they don't understand what's causing the ball to do what it's doing.
One of the things I like to get my students, I like my students to play offense. I don't want them to play defense all the time.
Exactly.
And if they don't understand what the fault is, they're always playing defense. And so you can't play off playing defense because, especially those guys who fight hooks, because all it takes is one hook early in the round and they're toast.
Yep.
They're done.
Yep.
I mean, they play the rest of the round trying not to hook it, and they don't have any under knowledge wide hooks anyway. And so everything they do is trying to defend that, and it just gets out of whack. I'd like to let's turn it around. Let's put you on the offense. I want you to be able to if there's a hook in there, let's get it out. Let's find the cause. Why did it hook? Let's take it out. So now it doesn't hook anymore. Let's eliminate it.
Right,
Mo
exactly.
Norman was great at that because Mo said, I made a swing so the ball wouldn't curve.
Yep. Mo was, I have very quickly, and I won't because I don't want to take up too much of your valuable time here, but I have an interesting story I've shared in the past about Mo Norman. I'm originally from Canada, and I had a couple of opportunities to be around Mo. In fact, I was out in the range with a very good friend of his, Nick Westlock, for a number of years, and he, of course, was a very prominent Canadian amateur golfer as well. And Mo came out while I was out hitting some balls, and Nick and I were working on some things, and Mo was one of these players that, he just went out there and did it. He didn't get into all this analysis and what he just, like you said, he just stepped up and did it. And Nick said to him one day, he said, look, Ted's having a few problems here. He said, can you help him out? And so Mo grabs a 7-iron and gets out there and just hits, about 5 or 6 shots and just puts him in basically a 3-foot dispersion pattern. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm not exaggerating either. I mean, you know how Mo hit, and it was just one after another in the same spot. And he says, that's what you need to do. Didn't get no explanation. It's just, and I had a little bit more than a fade at the time, and I was trying to get them into a consistent pattern. And then he pulled out his driver and did the same thing and hit it out, whatever the distance was, I don't recall now. But again, it was in a very, very tight pattern. And he says it's as simple as that. And, It was. To him, I mean, obviously there was a little more involved, but it was just amazing. It literally, my jaw dropped, because, here's this gentleman at that time was in his 60s, I guess, because he passed away around 72, I believe, at the age of 72. But he was in, I think, his early 60s at that time when I met him, and for the first time. And, it was just a very simple, it just went up there, he just didn't put a lot of thought into it, just got up there and did it, and the ball went where he wanted it to go. And, he didn't get into all of these different thoughts, and this is what happens to the average amateur golfer, is they get so much information overload that they just freeze over the ball. And then they don't understand what they did wrong because they're thinking too much.
Yeah, the easiest way to do that is you walk up to somebody and say, what are you thinking? And they turn around and look at you, and there's 14,000 things going through their head. Mm-hmm. And the ball can only do one of 3 things. Once it gets in the air, it's going to fly straight, curve left, or curve right. It's going to start right, start left, or start straight. It's going to be hit solid. It's going to not be hit solid. And that's it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's not 57, and you can swing it upright, flat, or on plane. Okay, so there you go. There's 3. I mean, so what are we doing? So why are we now talking about, the 7 to 9 to 14 to 15 to 17 steps to impact? I'm like, hello? And no wonder they're struggling so much. And I understand the basis behind it, but in this day and age, I think we need to keep it as simple as possible in that respect all the way through, and allow these people to understand what they're doing in a more simple fashion, but most of all, so that they can understand what their own cause and effect is, because you know what? They only need to know their own. They don't need to know anybody else's. They just need to know their own.
That's
so
right.
And worry about the other millions of players, just their own swing.
And every swing is unique. I mean, if you look at some of the players, I think the best example today, it's a little harder to decipher because there's so much repetitiveness between player to player in their swings, because they're all, trying to adapt the same type of swing, this ultra perfect swing. But if you look at some of the earlier players in the days of Nicklaus and Player and Palmer and that, there was so many different golf swings out there on tour that they were very unique, and that's really the way it should be. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody has to go and swing like Lee Trevino, but I'm just saying that there was such a uniqueness to each of the players, but yet they all yielded the same result. They all won tournaments. They all won major tournaments, and were very prominent in their sport. In today's game, these guys are getting. It's almost like they're looking for that perfect looking swing, that perfect way. I mean, as I mentioned earlier in the program, there is only one way to hit the ball straight. Straight is straight. There's no other way to hit it straight. And, and I think what happens is they're trying to reinvent the wheel to make it better. You can't, once you hit the ball straight, that's it. It can't go any straighter than that.
Correct.
And do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, it might, your ball flight might be a little higher, it might be a little bit lower, but straight is straight. The same thing if you fade it or draw it or hook it or slice it. The only difference there is your elevation. Is it going to be a high ball flight, low ball flight, mid, what have you? And I think what's happening is a lot of these tour players are even getting caught up in this. And don't get us wrong, for those tuning into the program, I don't want getting nasty emails and from coaches and things saying, well, you're trashing everybody. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is sometimes we have to take a step back and look at how we approach this game and how we give that information to the students that we're working with, because the way the industry is going right now, if we're not careful in reassessing the position that we take, we're going to continue to lose people out of the game. And everybody can argue, say, well, no, the game's not as bad as what you think. Well, it kind of is in some ways. There are a lot of people that have dropped out, and we need to be honest about that. We can't be doing that. But, Pete, let's get back into plain simple golf. Let's talk about the Simple Swing repeater training brace. Let's talk about the brace. How did that come about, and how does it work? And I know we can't visually see it here on the program. And as I said, for those of you that want to go and take a closer look, go to Pete's website, plainsimplegolf.com, but do it after the show. Let's hear what Pete has to say about it now.
How this came about is I left the John Jacobs Schools in 2001, and I decided to take a look at the golf swing. And I said, how can I take what I've learned over all the years and in a simple fashion figure out from the masses? Now, I didn't study the tour players because they already know how to play.
Right.
So I studied the masses. I had video after video, tons of videos from all the students I had. So I decided to look. And there was one common theme that I saw that we could change that would make a tremendous difference in the impact right away. But not only would it make a difference in the impact right away, they would get to where they would play better golf in a simpler fashion much, much faster. And so I looked at the hinge and the lag. So I looked at it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, when you set up an address, there's an angle formed between your arm and the shaft.
Yep.
That lead arm. And I'll say, for me, I'm a right-handed player. That's my left arm.
Sure.
I said, I'd like to get back to that. But the trouble I always had is when I made a big hinge in the backswing and then a lag, to time it back to that angle was difficult. It was hard to do. I was decent at it, and I was out practicing and playing and teaching every day. I was pretty decent at it. Those that are playing on the weekends are just driving them bananas. They can't get back to it. So I said, well, if we never leave that angle, wouldn't it be easier to get back to it? So I started looking at taking the hinge out. And so I started making swings, and I started working with some of the players and the results were phenomenal. I couldn't believe how fast I could get them to hit it straight. And I'm not talking 2 or 3 or 4 lessons. I'm talking 2 or 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I could get them to hit straight shots right off the bat, straight, solid, in the air, and solid. And if you can hit it straight and solid, it won't take you long to figure out where to aim.
No.
That becomes easy. And so I was working with one of my good friend's son, And we were talking about it. I said, if I had something that I could fit right over top of that lead wrist that would hold that angle in place, I said, that would go a long way to not only helping me teach better, but getting our folks to understand what that angle is all about. So 2 days later, there was a knock on my door, and he had the first prototype. So he built one. And so we decided and kept expanding from there, and that's how that came about. And so I just thought that if we could take the hinge and the lag out and allow the masses to swing that, now they get more forearm rotation. It keeps the face square to wherever they move their arms, so it's going to give them an easier time to keep the face square throughout the swing. And it's going to allow them to repeat. They can do the same move over and over and over again. So now when I'm not with them, I don't worry about what they're doing because they've got this on to start repeating what's going on. So that's how that came about. And, of course, the first question, and I know the listeners out there are saying, what about distance? Without that hinge and lag, I've been told my whole life that you can't get distance unless you have a hinge and a lag. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can.
Yeah.
Because every single one of my players that I've got on the SSR, that's what we call it for short, none of them is shorter. And how could I come out with a product and say, hey, I want you to try my product. I'm going to teach you how to hit it shorter. I wouldn't last 5 seconds in the industry.
No.
So what happens is now they hit it solid. They hit it a lot straighter. And if you do that anyway, you're going to average longer anyway. But, no, the ball actually goes further because now the arms can rotate. It shallows out the plane. The club comes in at a more level angle, which allows the shaft to kick as it's supposed to, which is going to fling the ball out there even further. If you've got a hinge and a lag, that shaft is going toe down to the ground at impact. How's that going to propel the ball forward? That's why you see so many tour players coming in so de-lofted. They got to make up the difference in the distance somehow. If that shaft is forward into the ground, they got to shove the handle forward.
Yeah,
the only
exactly.
way to make up the lack of it.
Yeah, and this is too why you see so much, even with the tour players, you see so much hand manipulation in order to get that timing just right, and you can't do that. I mean, the tour players, as you said earlier, they're out there just like you were, hitting ball after ball and playing on a regular basis, so they were able to accommodate, if you will, and adapt to what they needed to do. But even you, somebody at your level or a tour player's level, even finds fault at time with that. So how can we expect, as professionals, to expect a double-digit handicap player to be able to do that if they have to manipulate their hands in order to make up for what's happening with the club? So if you're able to create something that can repeat that same angle, as you said, it's simple. I mean, you do it that way. Why would you not want to do it that way?
Right. It's an easier way to do it. You put it on. You make swings. There's different plates in there that we put in there, so you won't want to feel any resistance from those. And as soon as you don't feel resistance, the arms are beginning to swing the club in the proper plane. All of the little things that everybody thinks about start to happen on their own. And now you've got a very simple process for them to put it on, get into a good setup. And I talk about the posture in there because that's important. You've got to have a good foundation, otherwise it's not going to work. And so once they do that, we brought it out into the market in July of last year, and we decided to test it. Actually, July of 13 we brought it out. So we decided to test it when we brought it out. And so I have a group of guys that I work with. They're all about 15 handicaps, so I gave them each one, and I really didn't tell them much. I said, watch the DVD, everything that's on there. I know we've been working on the swings before, but I just want you guys to put this on because I think this is going to help us get there faster.
Yep.
And within 4 to 6 weeks, I had 4 15 handicaps, and 4 to 6 weeks later, I had 2 8s, a 9, and a 10.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so then I knew, I said, we're on to something here because I knew it was going to work, but I didn't realize how fast it would work. And so it really began to work really, really fast. And we've got some players that, by going through what we put together, they're lowering their handicaps in half in 30 days.
Wow,
it's
that's
an
fantastic.
amazing process. And so they're able to just take their ball flight from the scattered patterns that they have and swoop they're right down the center of the fairway. So it's the groupings that they're putting together and making it really quick.
Yeah, and that's so important. I think what a lot of people even in the profession, understand we talk about wanting to help the students, and there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great teacher professionals out there, but what goes through the mindset of your average high handicapper out there right now is they're thinking, Lord, just get me around this golf course in under 100 strokes, and I'll be happy with that. And because they don't have the confidence that they're going to improve. They know what the dispersion pattern of their ball flights are. They know where everything's going to go. They know 1 minute they're going to be over here in the weeds. The next minute they're going to be in the trees. They might be lucky to hit a few in the fairway. And there's just no consistency. So a lot of times they're just hoping and praying that they're going to be able to get around the golf course. So it's amazing what happens once you have that knowledge, as you talked about earlier. Once you understand why the ball does what it does, why things happen, why they react the way they do. Once you have that knowledge and are understanding what you can do to change it, now suddenly, as you said, your dispersion pattern is now right down the center or very close to it, and now you're able to play with confidence. And once you build that confidence, it's amazing how your game changes entirely, and then your enjoyment of the game changes.
Well, I tell you, one of the guys that I put out a 30-day challenge where I developed a specific set of drills, and over 30 days I wanted them to do these specific drills. I think it amounted to about 3 hours a week of practice time. And I had a gentleman from Florida, Anthony Barbato, and I'm going to get to see him next week, which is going to be pretty cool. But he took the challenge and, just basically did what I put on the videos, and he was a 100 shooter. And as he put it, he said, I always hit foul balls. They went all over the place. And He said, I know you said in that you could probably cut your handicap in half, and he said, I didn't believe it, but he said by the end of the 30 days, he shot 75.
Wow.
So, he goes, I couldn't believe it. He said all the shots just started going straight. They were solid around the greens. All of my chips and pitches all go in the same direction. I don't hit them right. I don't hit them left. And he said it was really, and what he said is it was a simple thing to do. He said, all those players out there that are hitting foul balls like me, I said, this is something that can change that right away. And it wasn't over years. This is about, I think, the 26th day he was in the program. He shoots 75.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Granted, he had the time to practice, but that's the potential. And I tell people all the time, I said, you want to give yourself unlimited potential. Let's put you in a neutral position here with impact. And now the improvement is unlimited. But if you're hitting foul balls all the time and don't know why, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, and this is something too that people don't understand. And I'm a big proponent of practice. I think that's one of the areas that a lot of amateur golfers really fall short. They don't get out there; they're not practicing what they're being taught enough. It's easy enough to go and take the lessons, but if you're not going to get out there and practice what you're being taught, you're not going to improve anyway. So, I don't care who you get a lesson from. You can get from the top 10 golf instructors in the world, but if you don't get out there and put it into practice, you're not going to improve. But at the same token, you need to be practicing good techniques and good methods, and that's the other thing. You can go out and hit 1,000 balls a day, but if you're making the same mistakes every time, all you're doing is hitting 1,000 golf balls. But if you're able to learn and do things properly and hit it properly to make that proper contact, to hit it and have the club on the proper plane, and once you have all those tools and information properly and in a simple format as you're talking about here tonight, then suddenly those 1,000 balls are going in the same spot every time. And that's what Mo did. That's basically what Mo Norman did when he came out on the range with me that time, is he just went out there and repeated that swing. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, Mo's been hitting, thousands of golf balls all his life. But he doesn't get into all of the different swing theories and things like that. He understood what it did and how the ball would react, and he was able to figure out what he needed to do in order to, in effect, get the ball to go straight. And controlling his distance was just a matter of how much effort he put in, how far back he took the club in some cases, but it was a matter also of the club selection. And instead of having to changing his swing for every different club and manipulating things in different ways, and that's why he was able to hit the ball so well, and to this day is considered to be one of the best ball strikers.
Right. Well, there's one thing that I've always said too. There's not one correct swing, but there's one correct impact.
Sure. Well, sure.
So there's a lot of ways to get to it. But if you can concentrate on just getting the impact correct, how you do so is really not important as long as you can repeat it.
Well, exactly, and that goes to the point that I said earlier about some of the great players that played from days gone by. I mean, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Lee Trevino, Gary Player. Not one of them had the exact same swing, but they all had the same impact.
I'll tell you a little funny story if we have a minute. I was watching Raymond Floyd hit balls way back when.
Yeah.
And, Raymond always had the club stuck a little bit to the left. And he was trying to get the club on line in the right direction. And he kept trying. So finally he turned around and he asked one of the guys, he says, "What do you think?" And the kid looked right at him. He said, "Well, it seems to me you've won millions with it stuck over there. I think I'd leave it alone."
Well, and it's true. And that's the way it was in that day, and I think this pursuit of the perfect golf swing today has actually done more harm. Now, it's great in some ways. It's interesting to see all the changes that have gone in golf, but at the same time, it's actually become more frustrating for the average golfer out there because they're now being put into a mold, if you will, of trying to get that perfect swing. And as you said, it's all about impact. What happens when that club face hits the ball in a certain position at a certain point in impact is going to dictate where the ball is going to go. So whether you loop it over your head 3 times and do whatever, as long as you get into that impact position every time, then the ball is going to react the same way. And that's, as we were talking about with some of these other players, Trevino, and look at the differences between Trevino and many of the other players on tour. His swing looked nothing like most of the other players. But, look at what he accomplished.
Absolutely, and I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to him right before he went on to at that time it was called the Senior Tour,
right?
And I asked him about the evolution of his backswing, and he goes, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, you got tired of hooking it. That's why you stuck it over there." He goes, "You're absolutely right."
Yep.
He said, "Once I stuck it behind me, the face was no longer closed. It came a little bit open, so I just swung it to the left, and I'm having fun now."
Yep,
but
exactly.
It goes back to cause and effect. He figured out that if he put it in a different place, you could change it.
Now, Pete, let me ask you, you have and obviously we shorten it here, the PSG circuit program. Tell us a little bit about that, how it works, and how people can be involved with that.
Well, a number of years ago, I met a chiropractor by the name of Dr. Jeremy Maxwell, who now is a level 3 medical professional for TPI, Titleist Performance Institute. And we got to talking, and he and I are very much under the same belt that we're all about cause and effect and simplification. Let's get to the root cause so we can make things work. And so we got to talking, and by combining what he does with TPI and body motion and being able to get our participants so that there's no inhibitions in what they do, we can get the body straight, and through his chiropractic adjustments, he's an upper cervical guy, which is a really great technique. Right. And he can make sure that the body moves so we don't have anything in the way, or if there are some things in the way, we can take that into account. And so we use his services. He does his TPI screenings to get it set and get the body ready to go, and then I evaluate the golf swing and look at it, and then we get together and we put together a program based on what they need movement-wise so that they can stay flexible and keep their movement, what they need from an exercise standpoint that will enhance the things that we're trying to do in the golf swing, and then we combine that into a what we call a PSG circuit, which now you can come to one of those and you'll get the opportunity to work with Doc to get his training. You'll be able to get on the K-Vest and the K-Trainer, and we can enhance the movements that we need that are necessary based on what we're trying to do with the golf swing. And then you get my program from Plain Simple Golf in the Simple Swing Repeater. And so we put you through that process and combine the two together. And we found that by doing that, we don't have any inhibitions of what the body's doing. We can make it certainly more pain-free. There's so many, folks that have had shoulder and back surgeries that, in some cases have been told they shouldn't play anymore. And we've got them out there playing all the time because we're having them move so that they can function and there's no pain in it and swing in the proper way. So we put that together, and it's really become a great program for us. We're very thrilled with how it started, and it's very new. We started it last year, but it gives golfers the opportunity to get the whole package. And then we can do some follow-ups, and then I always follow with video, but it allows us to get them from a body structure all the way through to make it. And I will say from the TPI side, we looked at what the parameters were in there, but we set it up relative to what we feel the student needs. So we bring them in, and we develop their own program. Right.
And this is something, too, that one of the other reasons why I wanted to do this program, Golf Talk Live, was really to bring a lot of people from within the industry together. It's interesting, as we talked about earlier, to see things going on the blogs and different websites and things like that. But I really wanted to create a format, if you will, to bring a lot of the people from within the industry, both from the ladies' side, but also obviously the gentlemen's side, and really create a format, if you will, through my broadcast, and bringing us sort of all together and sharing and exchanging some of these ideas and talking about it, because I think the only way to really be able to continue to move this game forward is for us to sort of share our thoughts and ideas and sort of help guide, if you will, where the industry goes. And I think
no question.
There's certainly great, some of these other social media platforms, but nothing beats listening to the coaches and the instructors that are coming on to the different programs. And I'm not, and I've said this very openly before, I'm not certainly knocking Golf Channel or ESPN, but they're obviously focused primarily on the golf tours and things like that, and that's understandable. That's their market. But in a realistic fashion, not everybody out there is going to be the next Tiger Woods or Rory or what have you, or Michelle Wie or what have you. But they want to get access to that information, and certainly we want to guide and direct them to your website and others out there. But this is really a great forum, if you will, like-minded in the profession, to come together and share their thoughts and let not only the general public tune in, but also others within the profession to say, hey, I didn't think of that, or maybe I need to take a look at that. So it's a way for us all to sort of exchange ideas.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really happy that you're doing this, and it's even more excited that you brought me on, because it does give us that voice that we can get out there, that there is a different way, a simpler way. There are other ways to do it that you maybe haven't thought of, that can really enhance what you're doing, enhance what your players are doing, and make it just so much more simple. But just one little bit on going back to the tour players. The tour players are probably 0.0004% of all the players in the world.
Right.
And if you look at all the tours that are out there and all the players, there's probably only about 20 or 25,000 golfers that are trying to get on a tour. Okay?
Yep.
There's 33 million golfers in the U.S. I'll take the 33 million. You can have the 25,000.
Yeah.
I'm going to go after them, because they're the ones that need help. Because those other ones already know how to play. There are players and there are golfers. Both players are players. The rest of them are golfers.
Yeah. And
you know what? They need help.
Right. And the other thing, too, is I think that, once you help to remove the level of frustration, here's what the bottom line is, Pete, is this, and I think this is what we really try to emphasize, is we want the average golfer out there to go out and have fun. And a lot of them aren't having fun, or haven't been having as much fun here lately, because they're just frustrated. They're not improving. I mean, we all have looked at the stats. The handicaps have really not budged much in the last 20 or so years for the average golfer out there. So, and part of it is their lack of getting out there and working at what they need to work at, but also I think the industry has to share some of the blame as well. We've tried to, again, inform them about too much sometimes, or too much too quickly, and overwhelm them, I think, and their circuits are starting to fry up, I guess is a polite way to put it. Right.
The technology is at its highest point it's ever been.
Yeah.
But the scores aren't changing.
No, exactly.
So we need to step back and say, wait a minute. I understand the technology, but how can we turn this into a positive so that we can get the players to play better? And not in 2 years, now.
Right.
We got to get them to play better now. And it shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, because they won't last. Yeah, they won't last. Now, obviously, some of the more senior golfers that have been playing for 20, 30-odd years, they're playing purely out of the enjoyment. They're not looking to make great strides. Some of them, they're happy and content. They're going to stay where they are. But especially this younger generation coming up, if it's going to take them 2-3 years to see any sort of improvement, and it's just the next 2 to 3 years of nothing but frustration, they're going to drop out. And that's really what's happening. Is it's not the guys that have been, they're up in their 60s and plus that have been playing at the country club for years. It's the younger generation coming up. They want it, they understand that it's not going to happen overnight, but if it's going to take them a long process to even understand what it is that they need to do, they're going to get discouraged. And that's really where the market the juniors, and now we've got the ladies market that's opening up as well, and it's the same thing. They're newer to the market in comparison to the men's market, and again, we have to make it simple enough. And that doesn't mean that we're criticizing them or saying that they're not smart enough to learn. It's just that we need to simplify the process to allow them to have more fun, to want to keep engaged in the process. Otherwise, they're just going to keep dropping out like flies, and that's unfortunately what has happened over the years with some, anyways.
Right. The comment I hear a lot of times is they say, well, people are dropping out because it takes too long to play. I said, well, at the level they play at, yes, it does.
Sure.
It takes forever to play when they're playing that bad. They're always, you have two people a hole looking for a ball. That's 10 minutes a hole. Now do the math. It takes forever. Yeah. We got to get them to play better.
Right, and that's part of the reason why in some areas you're seeing 5-6 hour rounds. It's not because they try to blame it on the fact that the courses are packed and they're crowded and that. That certainly adds to some of the slow play, but the majority of it is because people are hitting it all over the place and they're spending too much time. The groups up ahead are looking for balls or waiting for Johnny to do his pre-shot routine that he saw on the Golf Channel last week. And and that's part of it. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but you're right. It's because people are not hitting it with any sort of consistency, so they're not able to keep up a good pace, and it just adds to the frustration for everybody.
I played with a bunch of guys when I was growing up. We called them the step and fetch it boys because after they hit it, you could step and fetch it and bring it back. They didn't hit it very far, and they were the oldest group at the course. And I tell you what, after 9 holes, I was ready to go take a nap. Those guys moved. They didn't shoot. They didn't shoot, even par or anything like that, but they hit it straight, they hit it solid, they hit it down the middle, and they moved. There was no looking for balls. They never lost. You couldn't hit it far enough to lose it anyway.
No,
but
I know.
They moved because they kept the ball in play. Well, now they're teaching the kids right off the bat, you need to hit it as far as you can right away. Come on.
Well,
now,
the other thing, too, the other thing, too, that a lot of people don't understand, and if you look at the stats on the PGA Tour, certainly distance has given advantage to some, but the majority of winners are not necessarily the ones that are hitting it the furthest on the PGA Tour. That's a myth.
No.
There's certainly some exceptions to the rule, but it's the ones that are keeping it in play, and it's really more the mental side, but it's the ones that are hitting it consistently and keeping it in play, because there's a lot of great ball strikers on the PGA and the LPGA Tour, but it's not anyone that's mastering the game because they're hitting it longer than everybody else. That's just not happening.
Right. Well, distance was the thing. Daly would have won every tournament.
Well, exactly. Same with Bubba Watson, some of these other ones that are out there. But yeah, exactly. But well, Pete, listen, I want to thank you for coming on. We're just wrapping up here the last couple of minutes. I want to thank you very much for coming on and sharing. I know there's so much more to go in, but there's some of it I want them. Now it's okay for you listening to go to Pete's website at www.plainsimplegolf.com and watch the videos on there and have a look and get a better understanding of that. So you're welcome to do that here. We're going to wrap up in a minute and learn about that and learn about the SSR, which is the Simple Swing Repeater training brace. And actually get your hot little hands on there. I know you can get that information through Pete's website as well.
Absolutely.
And you're going to get information on how to contact both he and his associates. But Pete, I want to thank you. And one last thing I think I sent the email out to you, but if not, I will take care of it tomorrow. But I want to also extend an invitation to you to join in on the Coach's Corner panel. I think you've heard me talk about it here on the program, and certainly mentioned it all over social media. And it's basically a format where we have a group of coaches on every week. That's going to be beginning March 5th. Of this year, and I did it last year about the same time and ran it through the rest of the year. And every week I switch out the panel. We have some different coaches and teachers and gurus, if you will, that come on and share ideas with some of the listeners and with each other as well, and some good panel discussions. So I'd like to extend that invite to you if you're able to. I'll send you out the schedule so you can see the dates, and it's the first hour of every Golf Talk Live beginning March 5th. So if you're able to commit to one or more, the only requirement that I have is that, or condition that I have is no more than one per month. So some of the coaches have signed up for 1 or 2 or 5, but just so that we can have a fresh face, if you will, from week to week. So, but I'll send it out to you. You can take a look. And I would love for you to participate, and any of your other partners in golf there, if you want to invite them as well, they're welcome to join in if they're in the business. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of people that joined in last year have returned again this year. It's a good format. We're going to have some fun along the way. and share some ideas and exchange some good, hopefully some good tips for our listeners out there.
Great. I'd love to do it. And I will say I'm going to be in Orlando next week. We're going to be over at Caucus Fire Golf Club, so if anybody's interested and going to be in the area for the show that has any questions about any of our stuff, contact me, and we can certainly make some time to get with you and discuss anything that you would like. But again, I really appreciate you having me on. This has been fantastic, and kudos to you for what you're doing. It's great for the game of golf.
Well, as I said before, I wanted to find ways of really engaging. I think that there's been sort of a hole, if you will, in the industry. I think a lot of people have done some great work, and everybody's sort of doing their own thing, and I think we have to applaud that. But I think at the same time, there's a lot of confusion, if you will, and a lot of attempts to try and grow this game, and some of it's good and some of it's not so good. And I wanted to create a vessel, if you will, and I've said this many times to the nausea of my audience, I'm sure, is really create a vessel for those in the golf industry to be able to come together. So that's why I extend that invitation out through social media to a lot of my fellow golf professionals to come on the program and share what it is that they're doing and their approaches, and everybody has something to say and something to share, and it not only benefits the general audience, but it also benefits those within the industry if we can exchange and share those ideas. So Pete, I appreciate you coming on and spending time with us tonight, and you have an open invitation to come back anytime you want.
Oh, I appreciate that. I look forward to listening in and hopefully being back on.
Yeah, and it's a great way, too, to introduce students, too, to some different thoughts and views. And like I said, the Coach's Corner panel is something that will be ramping back up again in March 5th. So I'll send you, I think I might have already done it, Pete, but if not, I will.
Yeah, you did send it to me.
So take a look at the schedule, and you can get it back to me hopefully in the next few days or so, because they're starting to fill up pretty quick. So I want to make sure that you get in there.
I will do that.
And I'm limiting it, just to let you know, I'm limiting it to a maximum of 3 coaches per show, just to keep it manageable. But you're welcome to join in for 1 or more if you want, whatever your slot permits. And we certainly appreciate your thoughts and input into the program as well.
Absolutely. I'd love to do it.
All right. Pete Buchanan, ladies and gentlemen, the director and founder of Plain Simple Golf. I want to thank him for sharing his time with us and with you out there in the audience. Thank you very much, Pete, and you have a great rest of the week.
All right, you too. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Not a problem. All right, good night. Okay, that was Pete Buchanan, as I said, the founder and director of Plain Simple Golf, and you can find out more information on his website at www.plainsimplegolf.com. And really a great guy, great asset to the industry, and I appreciate what it is that he's trying to do and keeping it simple, and I'm all about that. Don't get me wrong, I like the technology, and I'm interested in what new trends are going out there, but at the same time, sometimes just keeping it plain and simple sometimes is the best way. So anything that we can do to help grow the game and more importantly, help those that are in the game have a little bit more fun along the way. Speaking of fun, I enjoy doing this every week, and it's been good to be back on the air tonight. And I want to thank you for creating this opportunity for all of you tuning in each and every week. And I hope that you will continue to support the program. And I want to just give a special thank you again to my guests, Alison Curdt, for coming on here from out in California, and for Pete Buchanan for sharing his thoughts as well in the program. But I want to thank all of you, my faithful listeners worldwide, for tuning into Golf Talk Live each and every week. I certainly have the pleasure, as you can attest to tonight, an enjoyment of having a number of highly talented coaches, teacher professionals, some authors and entrepreneurs that have stopped by the program, and it's through their participation, guest appearances, that have helped make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. I want to give also a special thank you to some of the sponsors and supporters of the show, Mr. Jonathan Laird of South Coast Golf Guide. You've heard me mention him several times. You can go and get more information on his guide at www.southcoastgolfguide.com, and you can also find it on Facebook as well. Make sure you go there and like his page, and you can get some great insight onto some great courses down here in the southeastern part of the United States, from Texas all the way over to here into Florida, in through the South Coast Golf Guide. And if you're interested in advertising opportunities, you can email him at jonathan@southcoastgolfguide.com. I want to also thank you to Mrs. Meredith Kirk, who was the 2014 Mrs. South Carolina last year, but she's also a golf instructor at Meredith Curdt Golf, and she's going to be coming on the program here towards the end of February. She's been on the program before, of course, when I first started on, and she's going to be coming back and talking about some of the things that not only that she's been using her pageant experience, but to help grow, particularly in junior golf. We're going to talk a little bit about that and what she's been doing here over the last year or so. Also want to wish a very special thank you to Nikki and Tiffany. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, sorry, my tongue's tied, as I said, for all their help in spreading the word about the show. They're originally from over in Australia, and they've just migrated back here to the United States and wrapping things up here. And I'm going to get Nikki, when he feels up to it, coming on the program here. Nikki, of course, is a golf professional, and we're going to get and share his thoughts. And been just a great guy, and his wife, Tiffany, just have been super supporters of this program, and I can't thank them enough. So Nikki, look forward to having you on the program, and Tiffany as well. We're going to get her on here and ask her a little bit about Nikki, what it's really like to live with him. But just kidding, you guys. But anyways, looking forward to having him on the program. Mr. Bernie Pinder, of course, from Ontic Golf, great guy as well. Has a custom line of putters. OnticGolf.com. You can find out more about that. And Mr. Peter Doyle from over in Ireland at Doyle Golf Solutions. Make sure you check out him. They're all on Facebook, of course, and throughout the social media, so make sure you check out and thank them as well. And make sure that you go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog and throw a few likes while you're there. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. CEO, of course, is in capitals. You can do that. And just, again, a quick note on the Women of Golf show, which normally airs Tuesdays here on blogtalkradio.com every Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. A slight delay. We were supposed to have it this past Tuesday, which was, I believe, the 9th or 10th, no, 13th, I'm sorry. We've delayed that schedule, and Women of Golf will be coming back on the air. February 3rd will be our first broadcast of 2015. Cindy Miller and I, of course, LPGA professional Cindy Miller and I will be coming back live on the Women of Golf show on February 3rd. Again, one last time, March 5th, you want to make sure that you stay tuned for that. That's going to be our first Coach's Corner of 2015. Going to have a great panel discussion, and every Thursday we will take that through until the end of the year with some great coaches and great teaching professionals that are going to be joining in each and every week. So for some great panel discussion. So make sure that you guys send in your emails to the program. You can do so. You can send them to questions.golftalklive@gmail.com. That's questions.golftalklive@gmail.com. If you've got a question about an area of your game that you're looking to improve on, send it through. Send it with some contact information, how we can get a hold of you, and we may have a few surprises along throughout the year for those of you that are participating in that. But make sure you send them through and pose your question, and I'll read it out to the panel each and every week and see if we can help you with whatever area of game that you need help with. So appreciate your input as that, and you're welcome to call into the program as well. You can do that at any time if you just want to stop by and say hello, or if you want to, during the Coach's Corner, if you want to talk live with the coaches, and you can do so at area code 646-716-4667. You can email me personally if you're interested in coming on the show, if you're in the golf business, or if you would just want to have some comments about the show, you can do so at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Don't forget, every Thursday, live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'm here on blogtalkradio.com/golftalklive. And if you want to also visit the website, www.golftalkliveblog.com, you can do so. And as mentioned at the beginning of the program, you can also tune into the program through the downloaded podcast through iTunes. So go to iTunes, into the podcast section, and you can subscribe to both Golf Talk Live or the Women of Golf program. They're both there, and all the previously aired shows are there, so you can download and listen to them at your leisure. Some great guests on both programs, and also it's available at now Women of Golf is not as of yet, but it will be. But Golf Talk Live is available also at Stitcher.com. So if you're already using Stitcher.com, make sure you check Golf Talk Live. And again, shortly I'll have Women of Golf up there as well, but you can listen to it through there as well. Again, appreciate Alison Curdt for stopping by, and Pete Buchanan. Thank you very much, and thank you for tuning in each and every week to Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody, and thank you, and I look forward to serving you next week here on the show. Thank you.